Chair Kent, the meeting is now live.
Thank you very much. Thank you for welcome to the Board of Police Commissioners January 23rd meeting, and just call this meeting to order. I'd like to recognize that Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaty signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. So we'll move on now to the approval of order of business and approval of additions or deletions. Madam Clerk, do we have any additions or deletions identified? Welcome, Commissioner Critchley.
Chair Kent, there are no additions or deletions from the clerk's office today.
Okay, do any members have any additions or deletions to the order of business? No, seeing none. Thank you very much. Call for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I move.
Thank you, Commissioner Blackburn. And I saw Commissioner Giles' hand go up. Would you like to second that? Yeah, okay, Commissioner Giles. Call for the question. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. Motion's carried. Thank you. Now call for a declaration of conflict of interest. Seeing none, we'll move forward with our virtual public consultation on Halifax Regional Police 2023-24 proposed operating budget. Next, we will certainly do, I have a list of those who have met the timeline for public consultation. As a reminder to those watching at home, in order to have signed up as a speaker for this evening, the deadline would have been 2 p.m. this afternoon. So we now have 16 speakers signed up for today. Any member of the public who has registered with the clerk's office on this matter will be given 5 minutes to address the Halifax Regional Police 2023-24 proposed operating budget. Questions are not to be asked of the board during public consultation, as the purpose of the public consultation is to receive input about Halifax Regional Police 2023-24 proposed operating budget. Please keep comments respectful, on topic, and directed at the chair. Comments that are offensive, profane, defamatory, abusive to an individual or an organization are discouraged. Speakers engaging in such behavior will be asked to refrain from making such comments. If such comments continue, the chair will ask the legislative assistant to mute the speaker's mic and remove them from the Zoom meeting. Just want to remind everyone as well that the camera and mic are both important for your presentation, as we must hear you and see you. We'd ask that you when you present, you tell us your name and then unmute and begin speaking. So I will start with Naveen Rai, followed by Kylie Nunn, followed by Brian Carter. So Naveen, if you'd like to proceed, thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Naveen Rai, and I'm a resident of downtown Halifax. I agree with the prior presenters at the previous meeting and wanted to mention that the movement to defund the police is progressing too slowly. Instead of increasing police budgets, we need to act boldly to move towards new systems that work towards crime prevention and keeping people safe. But I wanted to raise a different point. Halifax is in a financial crunch. Buses in the city are not running because transit can't afford to pay enough to attract drivers. The number of unhoused people is dramatically high and there isn't money for them. Property taxes are increasing and it's making it hard for people to make ends meet. The residents of the city are not happy. HRM needs to find a way to fix these serious issues. And while this is occurring, the police are asking for a $95 million budget, up significantly from last year. Given the financial crunch that the city is in and all these serious issues, how can the police justify the extra money? The budget released by the police is very thin at only 3 pages for a $6 million ask. There are few details on exactly how the police spend their total budget. This makes it difficult for the public to provide informed recommendations. Still, I'll share with you 4 ideas that could help improve the efficiency of the police department. There is evidence that Halifax is over-policed. Halifax has an integrated police service with the RCMP. For 2019, the most recent year for which I could find data, Halifax has about 218 officers from HRP and the RCMP per 100,000 people. This is well above the national municipal average of 187 officers per 100,000 people. In addition, Halifax has a low crime rate and a low violent crime rate. The RCMP is requesting to add a total of 16 constables to the force in the next few years. Given these additions, we don't need additional officers. There's already too many. The IT services run by the police are not effective. The Halifax Auditor General is quoted as saying that HRP is not effectively managing risks to its IT system. It's time to take a bold look for a more efficient and effective way to provide these services. Halifax is home to many smart companies that specialize in outsourced IT services we could use. Alternatively, the RCMP has advanced capabilities which we should look at leveraging. Let's return to the recommendations from the Defund the Police report. Many of its recommendations could save money we need for other services. Detasking the police could save money. Take, for example, the 10-person pilot sobering center. This would take publicly intoxicated people out of police care. We can estimate that the sobering center will cost the municipality about 50% less per person than the current police-operated model. There are many other programs that could have a positive impact on the budget, putting taxpayer money to more effective use. Pilots for these programs should be undertaken using existing police funding. To highlight a few options from the Defund the Police report, detasking from incidents involving unhoused persons. Other jurisdictions have found significant benefits, including cost savings from reducing the amount of interactions that police have with unhoused people. We must adopt pilots based on these successful projects. Detasking from noise complaints. Bylaw enforcement officers could take an expanded role in responding to noise complaints and expand their hours of operation and approach the works in Toronto. This would help reduce the costs and the strain on limited police resources. As a final recommendation, I would like to mention a report published in August 2019 by Perryville and Taylor Consulting called Partners in Policing. Although heavily redacted, the report has several interesting findings. 2 recommendations should be explored for their potential for cost savings. The consultants found that the most common call for service that police are dispatched for is assisting citizens. The terminology is undefined. However, assisting a citizen suggests that police intervention might not be required, and there's a way of saving money and other resources should be considered. The consultants also state that the frequency of police dispatch is too high, for example, for commercial alarm calls. They are given a higher priority than in other jurisdictions in Canada. This costs money. Further, the report suggests that the civilianization of several senior positions and a deeper integration with the RCMP, that could improve the governance of the police, a positive outcome. To conclude, the requested increase in the police budget is too high given the other challenges the municipality faces. Please find efficiencies before further burdening taxpayers of the municipality. The Defund the Police report is a great place to start. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Naveen. Now call on Kylie Nunn, then Brian Carter and Hugh Martin. Kylie Nunn, are you with us today?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm nervous about public speaking, so bear with me. But before I begin, I do want to acknowledge the commitment of each community member who showed up to speak today as well as earlier in the month. It's likely that I would second the opinions of any of today's speakers who are in opposition to this budget increase, because generally I would like to see police defunded and to see more funding towards a variety of wellness services. However, I'd like to use my personal time today to speak to the subject of working with persons experiencing trauma. We can define trauma as any event or a series of events which overwhelms a person's ability to cope and has a lasting impact on their sense of safety. So as we know, police interact with people during and after such events very often, but specifically, I'd like to recognize the trauma that many members of the public have experienced and continue to experience while interacting with officers, with our justice system, and with policing as an institution at the times when they most need to feel safe. So to introduce myself further, I was raised rurally, but my community in adulthood has been the North End of Halifax. I'm an active volunteer and soon to graduate from NSEC with my social services diploma. I'm also a woman who lives managing post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of my experiences with gender-based violence. And I have had the experience of interacting with HRP during a wellness check, which caused me significant harm. As a person with this lived experience and as a student with professional knowledge, I know that having the appropriate training and perspective to interact with persons who are in crisis or are living with trauma is crucial and very ethically relevant. I was unable to find a curriculum for Halifax Regional Police's own policing school online, Perhaps I missed it, but this information should be easily accessible to the public. But my understanding is that police are being trained with a broad range of information in only 38 weeks. Based on other programs in country, I suspect that they're trained briefly in crisis intervention and social psychology. And realistically, I feel that this is very inadequate. There is a great deal of foundational learning that's necessary to engage with crisis intervention ethically and responsibly. And to work with vulnerable populations in general, a person should at minimum have a competent understanding of the psychology of trauma, addictions, mental illness. They should grasp the concept of intersectionality, and they should have an understanding of, as well as an ongoing commitment to, cultural competency and anti-racism. These things are relevant for many reasons, but I'd like to mention that particularly for racialized communities, a combination of bias and a lack of comprehensive training during wellness checks has been dangerous for people seeking help. This causes additional trauma, grieving, and fear for communities that are impacted by these harms. I don't believe that additional training for officers would be of benefit, as the inherent design of the institution and the nature of Canadian law will prevent an authentic shift to a person-centered and trauma-informed approach. I believe that the appropriate solution is to take responsibility away from the Halifax Regional Police, and instead I would like to see the city relocate funding in support of creating new responsive programs, which would be informed by experts in their field and by persons with lived experience. Programs which could more restoratively handle things such as crisis intervention, as well as sexual assault response, reports of domestic violence, and engaging with the homeless population. To be direct, my personal choice is that we would work towards the abolishment of policing, because I believe and have experienced that forced punishment and incarceration are rarely a solution or preventative of violence. But with the near future in mind and understanding that my opinion is not of the majority, I also believe that law enforcement can occur in collaboration with other responsive systems. I invite the board to see that there are many intelligent and solution-oriented people in attendance today and earlier in the month in our community and in our social services and healthcare industry who have a clear picture of how alternatives to policing will function successfully. We as the public should be able to influence and inform the solutions to our own communal issues. Some of our city's most brilliant community builders have already put forth suggestions backed by evidence. As the previous speaker mentioned, the report to defunding the police was created, and I'd like to see that revisited. It's with hope today that I speak, and I encourage you to reject the budget increase. The city has very few resources right now, and I currently do not feel that Halifax Regional Police have values that represent the majority of the public. Thank you for your time today and for consideration of my perspective.
Thank you, Kylie. Now calling on Brian Carter, followed by Hugh Martin and Steve Graham. Brian, are you with us? One more time, Brian Carter. Okay, we'll just move on to Hugh Martin.
Madam Chair, I'm just promoting him.
Okay, good.
So Brian, can you please accept the promotion to panelist, please? Chair Kent, he is now in the meeting as a panelist.
Okay. Brian Carter, the floor is yours. If you could state your name, please, and your resident area. Thank you. Brian, I think what I'm going to do is move to the next speaker, give you a chance to get yourself settled in. You can send a note through the chat if you would need to, and then we'll move forward. Oh, there you are. There you go. Almost getting up on you twice.
I'm getting an echo the whole time. So we're all good now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. My name is Brian Carter, and I live in Fall River. I just wanted to talk about the policing budget. It involves more than just money and personnel. The commission must include a great deal of consideration of many other factors that will ultimately affect the police budget. Some of the factors are things like the expertise the agencies bring to the table. HRM has a blended police model of HRP and RCMP, which is a bonus to the municipality. The RCMP provide 200 specialized sections and equipment with that, and HRP supplies far fewer. Consider that a blended police force that you don't need to duplicate services, but to date, since it's been blended, we have been duplicating services. Things like ERT, traffic investigation, bomb section, major crime, and so on. The Mass Casualty Commission has brought in experts from around the world to discuss the issues in Canada with respect to national standards for policing and move around the world toward a national police force and the services that that provides and the abilities that it has with these special sections. There's a myth that all police agencies are the same and that the special sections are the same, such as urban, and that is not at all true. The Police Commission needs to understand this and the costs involved with it. HRM is in a unique spot that we have the opportunity to move HRM to this national style policing model very easily and adopt, then the province could adopt it. What the experts saying, I'll give you an example. Dr. Hunter Martindale, he's the Director of Research for Alert Center at the University of Texas. He was here and he advised that the US model is not the model to follow. There are 18,000 police agencies in the US. His job is to try and get some of their training being consistent and some of the equipment consistent. He says it's virtually impossible because of budgets and other things that are involved. He also said, or we also know that since he spoke here, that there has been a blatant case that shows that mass number of agencies don't work. U of D, Texas, where the mass school shooting took place, over 400 officers from multiple agencies showed up, and they still made a blatant, basic mistake that could have cost lives. Then there's Dr. Timo Himberg. He's retired from rector from the National Police University College in Finland, and he's also criminal justice management professor at the University of Birmingham, UK. And Dr. Himberg explained that Scotland and Norway have recently moved to a national police system. The cost benefits, elimination of duplication, the raising the ability to develop expertise required in a complex and ever-changing world of crime. Small departments cannot keep up with this, and this is the model that they chose. He was amazed that Canada actually is having this discussion because he thought we already had a national system. He also knows that Quebec is using a national model. And the Quebec model, I'll discuss very briefly here. The Quebec model is one that we implement very easily in the Halifax HRM region. The way it works in Quebec, all the agencies follow the, which is their national police system, Sûreté du Québec. And there are 6 levels, and it's all based on population. First is, if you have 50,000 people or less, you do not have your own police department, you use a provincial police. If you have 100,000 and less, and you have the police department, you must follow all the things that training and everything that Sûreté du Québec has. This applies to all 6. The basic things that they have there is just 24-hour patrol, things like that, very basic. Investigations
30
are very
seconds.
basic. And you also have things like kidnapping and so on that can investigate those sorts of things. And the emergency measures they have for peaceful crowd control. And then they also have other minor things as far as equipment. Then there's level 2, 100,000, 250,000. Investigations bump up. So does what you're allowed to have for equipment and things like that. The level 3 is 250,000. Pardon me?
Your time is up, sir. Thanks. Thank you, Brian. If you have anything further, perhaps you can put that in a message through to the clerk's office. It can be shared with the commissioners.
It all affects our budget, though. That's the point. It all affects our budget.
Yes. Thank you. We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So I see Commissioner Critchley, I believe you have your hand up. Are you looking for a question to Mr. Carter?
Yeah, I would just like a question of clarification, if that's all right, Chair Kent.
Sure.
So two things, Mr. Carter, if you could clarify. So first, you talked about duplicated services, and you just went quite quickly through those. So I wanted to confirm the ones that you had mentioned were ERT, traffic, and what was the third one? Sorry.
Yeah, that's correct. You have Halifax Regional ERT, and you have RCMP ERT, and traffic services within Halifax. You have traffic services in RCMP. If those were merged and they were all working off the same playing field, it would be much more cost effective.
Okay, thank you. And just the second question of clarification, when you were talking about a national style police model, or then you talked about a Quebec style model, would that be specific to these different services, or are you talking more generally about the operation of the police service as a whole?
It's the police services as a whole. So, for example, if Nova Scotia would use the provincial police standards and SOPs, then everybody in the province would use them. And there is a caveat to that. They would argue that they have those in place now, but the RCMP don't use them simply because law doesn't allow them to use them, because you cannot use something that's lower than your standard. You have to use the highest standard.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carter. Before we move to the next speaker, I'd just like to, I understand that Commissioner Giles, you're having some trouble hearing that particular presenter. I think it was coming from their end because it was a little garbled at times. Are you able to hear us well? Yes, yeah. So just encourage our presenters to make sure that they speak clearly, and if we may have to interrupt if we're having trouble on our end to hear you. We want to make sure you have all access to all of us. Thank you very much. And now call on Hugh Martin, followed by Steve Graham and Hill Hamilton. Mr. Martin or Miss Martin, not sure. Hugh, there you are.
There, can you hear me properly now? Sorry.
Yes, thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for your time. A quick introduction. My name is Hugh, not Miss Martin. It's actually Mr. Martin. I can tell from just the screen. Yeah.
Couldn't see you.
And I'm the director for Nova Scotia for the National Police Federation. And I just want to touch on a few points specifically towards the RCMP members, I guess, in this equation here today. So thank you for your time. As a union, for our RCMP members, our concern is first and foremost their safety and their resources. As we all know, in Nova Scotia, the policing landscape is very dynamic right now with the pending MCC recommendations, the pending Department of Justice policing standards, and the ongoing policing reviews at different spots of the province. We're at a point where we really have to advocate for our members, specifically for their safety. In this case specifically here, I understand that the RCMP Chief Superintendent Christie has asked for 16 more positions, which I can understand why it is a big ask. However, I think it's a fair ask, and I'll explain a little bit about why I think that. Just the amount of coverage that the RCMP, the land mass that they cover, is huge. So I just saw a chat there that to stay on chat about the budget. So I'll stick to my points. I'll stick to that. I think it's important that there is funds allocated for those 16 positions, directly related to the ask in the budget. Our members are being tasked to do other things, which other presenters have touched on, with regards to whether it be mental health calls or increased traffic calls or things of that nature. We are certainly, as a union, we certainly agree with a lot of presenters' views that a lot of these support programs do also need to receive funding. But our point is that it should not be at the expense of our members and the safety of our members, obviously. There's all kinds of outside pressures that apply to policing right now, especially in Nova Scotia. It's been in the news in the last couple of weeks, very prominently, the healthcare crisis that our members are dealing with. Again, when we're looking for further funding for our RCMP members within the HRM, it's to help with things that they're having to deal with, right? As Chief Superintendent Christie touched on at the last meeting, our members are having to wait in hospital ERs when patients that are going through some mental health crisis are needing assistance. People that are going through mental health crisis are not criminals. It should not be a policing issue, but it does fall upon police to deal with those things, which at the end of the day affects our members because they're tied up for hours and hours on end. Having more bodies on the ground would ensure that if there's one member tied up at the hospital, that the other members that are out on the road can actually respond to the policing calls. We're seeing also our police officers are having to sometimes transfer patients because EHS and ambulances are simply not available. Again, not a policing issue in the past, but it is today. When it comes specifically to budget and policing with the RCMP within the HRM, I think it's important to note that the agreement that is currently in place with Halifax, where our RCMP members are subsidized at 30%, is a great deal for Halifax taxpayers. It's money well spent. It's money that we know is going to go directly to frontline policing within the HRM. And it's important also to remember how the landscape has changed. 20 years ago, a lot of the areas policed by RCMP were mostly rural. And in this day and age, with the population boom that Halifax is seeing, a lot of these rural areas are now become commercial or residential areas, which bring forward a whole new set of problems for our members as far as policing goes. The last time we had an increase in members in the RCMP was in 2018 within the HRM. And that was for 6 constables who were requested and approved.
30 seconds.
Thank you. So that was nearly 5 years ago now. The RCMP cost per capita in the HRM is $143. When compared to the national average of $317, we think the RCMP is a great deal, not a great deal, but a great service at an extremely good price for the population of Halifax. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hugh. Just one, before we go to the next speaker, I want to just, as the chair, suggest that to Commissioner Critchley, I know your position is that it's not on topic, but in fact, I think from the chair's perspective, and that's the position I'll take, is that, in fact, I think that any conversation, any public presentation around policing and offering insight into other jurisdictions, not just through HRP, is helpful, could be helpful to commissioners in any considerations, particularly when FTEs are being asked for. So I'm going to be allowing that type of presentation. And the Board of Police Commissioners received a budget submission, what would be going to council. And while we do not have that as a board to consider, we do have, and I mentioned it in the last meeting, there has been a precedent in the past where there has been consideration at the board level to potentially endorse a recommendation that goes to Halifax Regional Council for RCMP. So all of this, I believe, is relevant to the board as a whole. So I'll be allowing that. Thank you. And thank you, Hugh. Are there any questions of clarification? Seeing none, we'll move on to Steve Graham, then Hill Hamilton, then Dan McNaughton.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, great. Okay. Thank you. And thank you for the Board of Police Commissioners. Great to see this kind of consultation on policing and police budget particularly, because ultimately, as we all know in policing, it takes money to make it all work, and that's the reality. And this is a great opportunity for input to that system. I would say that this also permits an opportunity for commissioners and indeed the public to compare the asks and the current budget. And I looked at both organizations in reviewing the material, and came to the conclusion that Halifax Regional Police are just a bit above the Canadian averages, which is a positive thing. They're well resourced. And that's the good fortune, frankly, of the municipality and the public safety of the municipality. This is not taking away from previous speakers or other opinions around the need for additional or new investment in mental health services, social housing, various income supports, addiction services, and so on. The two things are not opposed. They are part of a broader basket that supports public health and community safety. The one thing that I would just comment on that in the future would be a strengthened consultation document in terms of part of the budget process, and that might require more ramp time, as I know the board is up against a bit of a timeline for the municipality's budget process, and I recognize that. One of the things that would be helpful, I think, particularly whether it's HRP's budget or RCMP allocation of funding for officers, would be just an understanding of what has occurred in terms of is there opportunity for resource reallocation to other higher priority issues, and are there certain other things that might be could be end dated or stopped. As the previous speaker mentioned, and I won't go into the data, I've submitted a document to the board early this afternoon or late this morning, I forget which I covered off many of the steps and the obligations of both the municipality and the board in terms of the Nova Scotia Police Act articulates very clearly that the responsibility is to assure adequacy, is to assure effectiveness, and is to assure efficiency. Those are primary considerations, and that together assures public safety in the community. One of the things that jumps out, and what I would just make a recommendation to the board and for future handling of this process, is that the total envelope for policing expenditures in HRM be brought together. They could be compartmentalized, but I think it would be valuable for the community to see those two realities and numbers. You've heard different numbers thrown around. One of them using Stats Canada data would be that in Halifax, under the previous municipalities of Halifax, Dartmouth, and Bedford, you're looking at 211 officers per 100,000. That's the rate. In the national average, 2019 data, Tuesday, which is one of your previous speakers said it was the only data they could find from Stats Canada, was the 2019 data was 183 officers. That's Canadian average per 100,000. And in the Halifax Regional Municipality, in the former communities of Halifax County, you've got a rate of 97 officers. That's a big disparity. We're talking a significant lack of resources, frankly, in the communities outside of the previous urban core of Halifax, Dartmouth, and Bedford. That, I think, is something on a go-forward basis the board needs to assess and look at as part of its budgeting process. We can talk about, different things about the cost of policing a resident. We can talk about the distribution of resources, and we can talk about the land mass. For instance, it's 94 to 95% of the land mass is actually outside. Was that my 1 minute warning?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay, even better. So I would summarize. I invite you to look at the document I've submitted. I would invite you to consider bringing the budget process together into a coherence for residents of the municipality, and that we look at balancing the supports and services across the municipality more equitably than they currently are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. Just want to remind our members of the board that all notices in the chat are for public record and all participants can see them. We just want to make sure everyone is aware. Now move to Hill Hamilton, Dan McNaughton, and Carmel Farah. Hope I said that right. Forgive me if I didn't. Hill Hamilton, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Hill. I live in downtown Halifax, and I'm speaking today in opposition to the police budget presented with or without service enhancements. And I'm also here with concern for the lack of information, data, and evidence available to the board and community members in the policing budget proposals, especially after the community board and council have requested better transparency around this process throughout last year. In the past, when concerns have been brought forward, they're often deflected or kind of seemingly resolved. Sorry, can folks hear me? Just want to make sure this is coming.
Yeah, you're coming in a little bit hollow at times, so might be not sure on the mic.
Okay. Any better now?
I think so. Yes, actually.
Okay. Sorry, I just want to find this. When concerns have been brought forward in the past, they're often deflected or seemingly resolved by referencing a statistic or a graph or a police project in other regions. But the board and community members don't get any of this information. And I think it's really important in us understanding what's being proposed and presented. And around last year's budget process, many city councilors, including the mayor, supported the idea of tying police budgets to accountability measures from police, specifically requiring police contractors to provide detailed reports about the use of the funds. But after the meeting on January 16th, just last week, where both policing bodies made presentations on their budget proposals, there was a lot of ambiguity and discrepancies in the data that they presented and in their budgets that kind of left me feeling as though we're not being given the adequate information to like fully elicit any amount of accountability through civilian oversight. Last week, I'm going to speak specifically about the graph they talked about for their hate crimes unit. There were other examples throughout the presentation, but this just one was easy to highlight, that it was a little bit misleading or that there wasn't a context provided for the graph's interpretation. And they were also asking for more funding for that unit. So they showed the graph that indicated a jump in hate crime incidents, sorry, not hate crimes, from 3 incidents in 2021 to 153 in 2022. Looks like a huge jump. And that graph was shown to demonstrate the need for more funding, specifically the hate crimes unit. But the chief also noted later in his presentation that last year, 2022, was the first year the hate crimes unit was established. And that wasn't provided in the context of the graph and really changes its meaning. Because it's likely that there's just a change in reporting that's happened within HRP that better tracks the hate incidents. And it didn't indicate a huge difference in the change in hate crimes, but didn't match that data that Stats Canada reports. So regardless of whether or not the data is accurate or like misleading, we aren't given the context or the information that we need to determine or consider what the police's efficacy is. And that has been discussed throughout meetings this year around police budgets. In past discussions of hate crimes and incidents between policing services and the board, Chief Consilla stated that hate crimes could be motivated by religion, gender, disability, or sexual orientation, but failed to mention race until sometime later in the meeting after being presented with an example by a commissioner. And during that discussion, both chiefs also reported not being able to easily find race-based data on hate crimes through their, I forget what the software is called, it starts with a B, but they aren't able to get that information easily without reading the details of each individual report. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because Stats Canada reports that over 80% of police reported hate crimes are motivated by racism. But the data that we're being presented is kind of implying that HRP are really well equipped to deal with this issue.
30 seconds.
But the reality is that they haven't provided any evidence that shows us that they're able to do that. I'm not trying to imply that the hate crimes unit is specifically something that shouldn't be funded, but I want to draw attention to a larger issue of where reasons for funding are being given without any supporting information. And that's reflected further in the budget proposal as well. Like the first speaker said,
Becky, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So the next speaker, oh, sorry, Harry, I believe Commissioner Critchley has a question for you, Hill, if you're still available. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just confirm that Hill is still available? Is that
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wondered, I really appreciate the your focus there on the hate crimes units and some of the information that's needed. You kind of made a more general point. You're saying at the end there that there was not enough information to determine police efficacy, particularly as it related to the budget. And I wondered if you could just clarify what information you'd be looking for in that regard.
With regards to the hate crimes unit in general.
No, just more generally, please.
I think like throughout the past few presentations, it would be better to have a more detailed budget before these kind of community consultations, because like the first speaker said, that what was provided was really short and brief, so it's hard for us to know the details. And then in the actual presentations themselves, often graphs have different scales and they're kind of superimposed on top of each other, and they don't have information about what data was used to create the graph. And I think that's like really important for just the general public to understand what we're kind of being shown.
Thank you
so
much.
I would say more context mostly.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Hill.
Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now call Dan McNaughton.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Board members, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. My name is Dan McNaughton. I live in Fall River, which is part of the HRM, of course, as we all know. Now, I might be able to save us a few minutes here because my comments are going to be particular to the resourcing structure of the RCMP and in the rural, the more rural policing areas of the HRM. And what I've seen is a noticeable dramatic increase in our population here. I live in St. Andrews Village in Fall River, and I would say our population has at least doubled in our little community, if not tripled. So my comments would be about RCMP resourcing, and so I'm wondering if it's not appropriate for this meeting, that's fine. I'll put them to paper and make them at another time, or if you'd like to hear them, I can go on.
Thank you. I've already made a decision on that prior to you coming forward that we would allow it.
Okay, I'll be briefer anyway. But as I said, I'm a resident here in Fall River. I've lived here. I moved back to Nova Scotia in 2008. I noticed one of the previous speakers mentioned that the last increase to the RCMP person-wise was in 2018, and I believe they said it was 6 or 8 positions. I can't remember. I think I made a note on it, but the population in rural HRM is outpacing, actually, I think, the population of the inner city. And it seems to me that the lack of resourcing to our rural policing has been a detriment. I know that I was raised in Waverley, and at that time, Waverley was a part of the old Halifax County, which was policed exclusively by the RCMP in those days. And from my experience, the RCMP had a much broader experience, a much higher level of visibility, et cetera, in those days. And I think the resourcing numbers were more proportionate to the population in those days. So I guess my neighborhood has doubled in size, but the policing has not been increased proportionally. So I would ask that when the budgets are considered, that do consideration be given to the rural areas. It seems like, tax, we pay a significant amount of taxes. I mean, everybody does, but the tax money that we pay does not seem to be reflected in the increase in support and structure for our rural community. So I would confine my comments to that. Actually, that would be all I would have to say. So somebody else could have my extra time if they want. I just wanted to see. I know that the area policed by the RCMP is about 43% of the HRM community, which is almost half. But the resourcing is significantly less than that. So I would ask for some parity with resourcing for the rural community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or clarification? Seeing none, thank you. I see Carmel, you are on the screen now, so you're ready to go. And that will be followed by Catherine Winkler and then Paul Schwarzenuber.
Thank you so much. My name is Carmel Farah, District 7. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm here to voice in opposition to the police budget increase. As a passionate nonprofit and youth worker, I work always from a youth-centric framework, which means that the youth that we work with have direct say over our operating procedures and policies. In my places of work, we have had consistent and unanimous youth feedback calling for the removal from police response in our procedures and policies for their well-being, peace of mind, and safety. These queer and trans racialized youth do not feel safe, seen, protected, or at ease with police as a potential involvement. In these conversations, I've often asked what these youth can imagine instead of our current systems, and they have brilliantly shared things such as food justice programs, sustainable food bank programs, supportive and culturally relevant addiction services, further access to community arts programs, and alternative education spaces, 24/7 heated washroom spaces and rain spaces throughout the city, and so much more. In addition to elevating these amazing perspectives from our young and invested community members, I want to specifically discuss 3 pillars of what I believe are a crucial element of a thriving city. These elements are 1, arts and culture, 2, accessibility, and 3, community safety. In the recently released 2023 Budget Direction Assessment and Revenue Update Agenda, I was disappointed and saddened to see proposed spaces where funding could potentially be cut, including but not limited to $300,000 from professional arts grants, $145,000 from the Discovery Center, $100,000 from the Dartmouth Heritage Museum, numerous parks and green spaces, as well as reducing consistency of transit snow stop removal, eliminating senior snow programs, reducing road safety improvement, removing residential sidewalk and snow clearing, as well as parking and transit increase, charging public use for certain recreational centers, deferring an opening of a youth center in Spryfield, to name a few. To me, this demonstrates a lack of understanding of what community safety is. Community safety stems from access to supportive representative systems and resources. Public safety is an access to city-held and understood holistic and comprehensive mental health analyses, which utilize a social determinants of health framework. Cutting access to arts funding shows that there is not a full understanding that arts access is harm reductive. City-centered accessibility costs or increased financial barriers to recreation-based spaces demonstrates to me an inherent misunderstanding of what is necessary to be prioritized in a growing city. We hear the police talking about public safety and community safety as rationale to a huge increase, but we see all other sectors deprioritized and struggling. We have heard time and time again from our communities that police do not keep them safe, rather the latter. And we have seen critical importance of community arts, accessible city spaces, and community-led mental health interventions, but we are still having to advocate for these sustainable funding models. Additionally, in October 22 CTV article, we see a lack of confidence in Dan Kinsella's leadership from the HRP themselves, described by insufficient planning for major events such as protests, aggressive and retaliatory behavior and unwarranted use of the Police Act process, organizational chaos, and a non-transparent promotional process, to name a few. How can I feel comfortable with this increase if the HRP themselves are voicing these concerns and trust that tax dollars allocated to the HRP will be spent without fiscal responsibility and an intention for community safety? Associated, I'd be remiss to not mention the 2022 Bill 96, the Dismantling Racism and Hate Act. Through this act, we see a provincial priority of achieving equity and anti-racism, eliminating disparities and hate inequities that negatively impact marginalized and racialized individuals in the province. I feel strongly that a police force that still targets predominantly racialized and marginalized communities is not in line with these commitments. Examples of this can be found directly in the extensive 2022 defunding report. Lastly, at the last meeting, Dan Kinsella spoke of police in emergency rooms with patients and hiring more staff to cover this. While healthcare broadly may be out of the scope of City Council, this funding could be diverted from police responsibility entirely by investing in local organizations offering emergency mental health support and proactive programs. Many people have spoken to a variety of healthcare and mental health issues, and while councillors have asserted in the past that this and housing are provincial issues, council has a precedent of supporting health and housing of the community through more localized fundings. So when healthcare issues are cited by the police for an increase of funding, the city must consider other ways and additional staff for emergency responders, when emergency measures could be avoided altogether by diverting intentional funding to harm reductive community care. I believe that all of this is within governance of council, and so funding other solutions to the issue of policing is possible, and I strongly believe in the necessity of this future. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Carmel. Now we'll be offering the floor to Catherine Winkler, followed by Paul Schwarzenuber, and then immediately after that, Amanda Reconnect.
Good afternoon to the Board of Police Commissioners and all attending today. I want to apologize for my internet. I'm sitting in our stairwell, so if you can't hear me, I apologize. My motivation for attending today comes from my very ordinary observations as an ordinary community member living in the North End, a rather old and definitely white community member at that, I acknowledge. But I want to articulated the dire need to take on this work to defund, and those who have taken on this work together within the community, within municipal government, and hopefully within the police force itself. Opinions and suggestions shared publicly and in person to the Board of Police Commissioners on January 16th include profound insights, research, and experiences, many of them echoed today. Take these contributions seriously. This will give the Commission a roadmap. It's not just business as usual. It goes against the will and needs of the people. In fact, increasing the budget, the police budget, would not only have a hollow ring, it would resound with the strains of neo-fascist tendencies we see daily on the news, action by militarized and weaponized systems worldwide promoting organized violence by those claiming to protect. Despite the many acts of compassion and concern we witness daily in our communities, we continue to underfund care and rob the public purse for policing those that need that care most. Yet in using "we" here, I recognize that power to make changes to the police budget is not distributed evenly, not by those giving the public input, and not by those hearing these contributions. Where is that power? Does it lie with the members of the Police Review Board, or is it embedded in the institution of the Halifax Regional Force? Let me remind you that almost 60% of the submissions to the public consultation process in defunding the police, finding the way forward, express support for action in defunding the police. Let me remind you that the support for defunding was higher amongst women and gender diverse folks than amongst men. How much input to the 2020
Catherine, I just want to let you know that
police budget
Catherine, can
was
you hear me?
authored by women and gender diverse folks. Hail, please.
Catherine?
Yeah.
I just want to let
I
you
guess
know.
I could. You can't hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's quite broken up. We probably missed your last 2 or 3 sentences, and I just want to let you know, and you're freezing a little bit. So I'm not sure how much time you have left, but I wanted you to be aware that we may not have got it all. And if we don't, just in case, if you'd like to follow up with an email or something, I'm sure that we can make sure that our members get that. Go ahead and maybe Madam Clerk, you can give her a few more seconds just to see if we can get her information today.
Yes, Chair Kent. I believe Catherine has sent correspondence in just around the time that the meeting started, so I will be forwarding that on to the board. As well, if she turns off her video, it might help her get the last comments out.
Thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, that's quite a lot better.
And I thought I was just warming up, and I'm coming to my last comments apparently, but thank you. In any case, 60% of public interest to curtail police spending does give all of you as members of the Police Review Board a leg to stand on, and add to that the backbone of justice. 2 legs can be firmly planted to act and support the will of the people. I find this budget is unacceptable. There's no effort to reduce the budget. In fact, it's a remarkable indicator of uncooperative disregard of the public mandate. If the police are serving the public, the budget would reflect a decrease rather than a demand for an increase. So this budget should have the police finding ways to turn allocated money to services that will reduce harm. Why aren't they concerned with defunding themselves? So in conclusion, I am going to hop to my conclusion, but I have submitted my comments in writing. In conclusion, please realize that you have the information you need as Police Commission. You have the report defining the way forward. Please increase allocations of funds to community-based social service and detask and defund together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Not seeing any. I now call Paul Schwarzeneuber, and followed by Amanda Reconnect, and then Cordina Clayton. Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And congratulations on getting my name right. It's not easy. I want to thank you all for having this possible, hosting this session. I've learned a lot by listening to people, and I am very appreciative of that. It's reinforced my view. And I want to just make 2 points about the process. First, it seems to me that siloing the police budget, apart from all of the other things that HR spends its money on, is comparing and contrasting, not rethinking and moving money around. Are you having trouble seeing me, hearing me?
We're having trouble hearing you. It's breaking
Is that
up
better?
a bit. You've turned your mic up, your
Okay,
camera.
I'll turn my video off.
Yeah, that is a
Yeah.
little better. Yes.
Is that?
Yes.
Okay, so I think having more information about how this budget relates to the general budget would be helpful. And I think we're stuck in a rut in many ways of sustaining things that may have become obsolete. And we're not going to realize that until it's too late. So my strong suggestion would be to open out this process further, to go back and think about the defunding the police report and all of the good suggestions that were embodied in that, and try to implement fundamental change now where we rethink where the police fit in to the rest of the things that we need to do here. I'm a senior who live in the North End. I walk a lot. The place where I would like to see police is protecting the people on the crosswalks and the aggressive driving that's happening in the city. I don't see them there. They're somewhere else. And I have no idea where they are. So there's a certain amount of frustration in that this is a wonderful place to live, and it could be even better if we really focused our energy now while we had time on reorienting our budget process and reorienting the allocations and where we spent things. So I think I'll stop there. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Paul. Not seeing anyone asking for any clarification. Thank you. Commissioner Giles has asked that we make sure that you understand that the HRM Board of Police Commissioners is not the Police Review Board, and I think perhaps that was interchanged in your comments. I just wanted you to understand that we are not Police Review Board. Any relation for us is related to specific types of complaints, so that would not be our mandate. Thank you. And now call on Amanda Reconnect, then Cordina Clayton, and Monica Landry. Amanda, are you with us? One more time for Amanda, and then we'll come back to her later in case we...
I'm here.
There, okay. Thank you.
My name is Amanda, and I am calling from Lakeside. Thank you for this time. I would like to just quickly touch on how I think that there's a conflict of interest having somebody who is representing the National Police field, their RCMP union, being a speaker on this panel, which is meant for the public. So I think that Hugh Martin's comment should be taken off record, please. Also, I'm interested in addressing a little bit about the rural areas where somebody called for more police in the rural areas. Much like the city, we don't need more police in rural areas. We need more services. We need better transit access. We need harm reduction services. We need crisis intervention services. We need healthcare services. We need mental health services. Can you do that? We need more accountability from the existing HRP to Black and African Nova Scotian communities and Mi'kmaq and Indigenous communities, racialized communities, and immigrant communities. We have seen a lot of disrespect and poor interactions from HRM, and they've been called to task many times on this. They have no business looking to increase their membership when the training that they have is already up for question and unable to be found on the internet or found by the public. And recently in a trial, officers were quoted as saying that they don't remember the training they've had on racial biases. So the HRP currently isn't even spending their budget appropriately. We see their officers are showing up in grocery stores, moonlighting, which is something that should be talked about with the police union, why their constituents are moonlighting and working in grocery stores policing citizens when they should be attending to things as officers in their overtime. We're really grossly spending our budget on police. We don't need to increase the budget. It's a misuse of public funds. As somebody already said, there's duplicated services. I don't think the members of the public know this. I certainly didn't. I've learned a lot being here. And I think that this particular way of interacting with the public, offering it by Zoom, while is somewhat accessible, the time that it's been offered at and the frequency that you're offering it and the last minute of this offering has made it so it's very inaccessible to public. There's only been 16 people that signed up for this today. There was over 30 people that were speaking at the last meeting. And I know that there are a number of people who would like to be a part of this and have their voices heard and understood who can't access this meeting. And that's all I'm going to say for my time. And I'm going to leave that for other people to use.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just, I was hoping that I'd hear from solicitor on your request around the conflict of interest piece. Marty, are you open to having any clarity on that?
Well, I think that the trouble is divorcing simply because a person is a member of a particular organization doesn't mean that they don't have a right to express their personal views as well. I think what perhaps would help is if we had proper identification of any interests that people have. I've noticed that not all speakers have identified when they have an issue or whether they might have a particular interest in this issue. I do note, I think that we did have a former board member speaking here. We've had some people who have connections with the RCMP. I think it's important that even if they want to speak from their personal perspective, that they should, we should ensure that they identify that any interest they have.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Amanda. We'll now call on Cordina Clayton, Monica Landry, then Emerson Roach.
Hi, folks. Unfortunately, Cordina had a scheduling conflict, but asked me to present her concerns. My name is Kate McDonald. If we're stating affiliations, you might be more familiar with me as an August 18th arrestee with charges dropped. Cordina relayed to me that she strongly opposes the suggested budget increase for the 2023-2024 HRP RCMP budget, and ultimately is in support of defunding the police. She cited her opposition largely as being because this budget increase doesn't benefit or positively impact the African, Nova Scotian, and Black communities, as well as many other racialized and marginalized communities in this territory. There are many other African, Nova Scotian, and Black-led initiatives that are community-based that could greatly benefit from this funding. Funding that the HRP and RCMP does not, funding the HRP and RCMP further does not support healthy, loving African, Nova Scotian, Black communities and futures. We need justice strategies and solutions for us, by us, outside of these colonial models. For the past few years, we have heard meetings full of people oppose budget increases for the police. At what point will community feedback be taken seriously? Community from far and wide has come up with brilliant, life-saving, care-centered, radical ideas for the future of the city and territory. What does this mean for all of us when other systems and markets are crashing down around us and they're not being funded? What are we waiting for? When will we begin to build a new world for all of us? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see any questions of clarification. Now call on Monica Landry. And then Emerson Roach and Calendula Slack. Monica? There she comes.
Okay, hello. Can you hear me?
I can. You have a very soft voice, so we'll see.
Okay, I'll speak up. Thank you. My name is Monica Landry of downtown Halifax. Thank you for the opportunity to I would like to voice my opposition to the leasing budget. I want to make today in my time taken from the report prepared for the police commissioners signed defunding the police defining the way forward for. I thought that these, as we've heard from others about held up in emergency rooms, this which just furthers the importance of detasking in areas where we know that providers could a better job. From the recommendations from the report, rather than increasing the detasking police from crisis response, safety, third-party reporting, and to all their detasking with regarding
Monica,
people,
Monica,
intolerance, overdose. Yes.
I just want to interrupt. You're really broken up. I'm going to ask if you can also let's try turning your video off, and we'll see if that improves it. Okay. Are you still there, Monica? Okay, we may have lost her. Hopefully she'll come back on and we can come back to her. I'm going to suggest that we carry on, and I'll put that in the chat so when she comes in.
Sorry.
Oh, there she is.
Pardon me. I hope the sound.
No, Monica.
Not really?
No, it's not. It's not helping. What I would like to suggest is one is make sure that you are aware that you could still send something in for the clerk to share with the commissioners. Maybe we can carry on with the other members, other speakers, and then at the end I can come back to you. We can give it another shot. I don't know what the issue is, but we don't want to give up on it completely.
Okay, thank you. I'll respond in the.
Yeah, you really are losing you almost completely. So Thank you again, though, Monica, for attempting to share with us, and we look forward to getting something from you in another form. Emerson Roach, are you there? There you are.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. Okay. Hi, my name is Emerson Roach. I'm a lifelong citizen of Halifax, currently residing in downtown, and I'm here today to express my opposition at the proposed budget increase for the Halifax Regional Police. Right now, we have a city in crisis. Our healthcare system is failing. The costs of rent, food, and just about everything is rising, but wages are not. Our social services are woefully underfunded, and our citizens are suffering. The answer to this is not to give the police more money. I echo the words of previous speakers who have advocated against this budget increase, talking about where this money should go to, like social programs such as affordable housing, healthcare, childcare, education, food security, climate action, public transport, and more. Over the past few years, we've witnessed a disturbing uptick in violence at the hands of the regional police. And so most of what I want to talk about today is this violence that we've witnessed and then the lack of accountability. So we've seen unwarranted and fabricated charges against mostly racialized community leaders who have been calling for the defunding of police. We've seen officers brutally attacking peaceful protesters who are trying to protect our most vulnerable unhoused community members, as well as innocent bystanders, including pepper spraying a child under the age of 10 who was walking by. We've seen officers maliciously destroying the belongings and shelters of homeless people during a time of unprecedented climate emergency, where we're seeing worsening weather conditions. We've seen widespread racial profiling on our African Nova Scotian community members. This is seen in a report, in a 2019 report by Scott Wortley, that Black people are 6 times more likely to be stopped by police than white people. We've seen police illegally removing their name tags and badge numbers and obscuring their identity in various ways to avoid accountability from the public. And that's just a sample of the police misconduct that we've seen. When this misconduct is brought to light, the thin blue line tightens up and protects each other from any sort of consequence or accountability. The Serious Incident Response Team and the Police Review Board almost always side with the officers and let them off with a slap on the wrist, if anything. The Halifax Regional Police have refused to release any officer disciplinary records when presented with an access to information request by CBC News. There's talk of purging all records of street checks, which eliminates the direct evidence of decades of racial profiling at the hands of the Halifax Police. Additionally, the way that cases are recorded in the HRP's system makes it nearly impossible to analyze whether or not the police are actually effective at their jobs. The police are making it harder and harder for citizens to hold them accountable, which is easy because they hold all the power. Nothing changes because the police have no incentive or desire to change, only a desire to placate the public. When you have a position in society that allows you to wield power and inflict violence upon people with little to no consequence, you're going to get a lot of people who will be attracted to that role because they are allowed to commit violence with impunity. And I personally have witnessed officers many times who seem to derive enjoyment from scaring citizens and threatening violence. The police do not prevent crime or violence, and they do not protect the people of their communities. They exist to protect property and to uphold the existing structures of power that we see, structures that enforce inequity and oppression on a large scale. What does prevent violence is investing in social programs such as affordable housing, healthcare, childcare, education, food security, climate action, public transport, and many, many other things that the other speakers have mentioned already. So I wanted to voice my opposition to this budget increase and say that the police are not actually serving us, so why should they be getting more money? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emerson. Okay, so just Andrea, just want to make sure that you're aware of the message in the chat around reaching out either to Monica, the previous speaker who we lost, or offering a phone number up to her. So you might, maybe.
Actually, Chair Kent, staff's been reaching out to Monica.
Super, thank you very much. So now I'll call on Calendula Slack, followed by Veronica Post.
Oh, it is so dark in here. I am so sorry. Oh, sorry, goodness. No, I do not look like a person. Okay, I'll try to keep this quick. Hi, everyone. Oh my goodness, it is so dark in here.
We actually can see you probably better. You can see yourself in your phone.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
You're good.
Awesome. I just look like a demon right now on my end, so I'll try to be quick.
I assure you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Calendula, and I'm here to voice my opposition to the proposal to increase the annual budget for the HRP. I echo the sentiments of many other speakers here tonight who have stated that the proposed increase in budget can be better allocated to adequate mental health support services and an intentional plan to address the housing crisis and rising houseless population in the HRM. I have worked with and for community nonprofits, organizations, and artist-run structures for years, and my takeaway from being a very involved community member, my takeaway from my experiences is that the police are not equipped to be navigating complex mental health emergencies, especially as they relate to marginalized identities and people of color. In fact, police oftentimes act as barriers to accessing competent or available mental health services due to the fear of facing further violence or trauma. As a community member, I have had years of firsthand experiences on how quickly someone's mental health can take a sudden nosedive for any reason at all. It has happened to close friends of mine. And when we've tried to access mental health services for them, for Indigenous women, it was hard to make that decision because we were fearful of further violence. Capitalism doesn't take a pause whenever someone is going through a crisis or any kind of issue or life-altering incident. And yet these individuals are still expected to maintain their livelihood while getting back on their feet. It would be a much more effective and kinder solution to provide these individuals with the means of rebuilding their lives. If this is the new standard, then there wouldn't be a need for police intervention in mental health services, which would then free up more current police officers to be on the road or in rural communities. My belief is that if there are adequate and trained services and service providers, and if police are no longer in the equation, that is going to make accessing these services feel much more welcoming. And thus, police can just sort of do what they want in rural communities if they are needed there. Additionally, artist-run centers and community organizations are often doing the most community engagement work when it comes to providing or finding appropriate resources and solutions. However, these organizations are continuously facing budget cuts year after year. Additionally, regarding fiscal responsibility, there's so much more pressure on these organizations to be reporting their statistics and detailed, transparent breakdowns of how they're allocating their funding. The police are not held to the same standard, and as many other speakers have already mentioned, I have yet to see the proof that what the police have done the past year is so helpful that they need more money. I fail to see the ways in which this budget increase would actually benefit the people of Nova Scotia in any way at all, especially our youth who are currently facing so much insecurity and fear for their housing security, and also seeing the increase in houseless populations. It is clear these people need adequate mental health services, not police intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Calendula, sorry. Okay, don't see any commissioners asking for clarification. So we will now proceed with Veronica Post. We are still struggling. I think Amanda is still struggling with internet problems. So she's going to submit to the board through correspondence. Immediately following that, I'll make 3 calls for interest in speaking again. And following that, we'll have if the chiefs, either Chief Kinsella or Chief Christie would like any to make any clarifying comments. And we'll open the floor to them. Thank you, Veronica, for your patience. The floor is yours.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for your time. And first, I'd like to address the accessibility of this meeting. Thank you for offering a virtual option for people who weren't able to make last week's meeting. For the future, I think all meetings should have virtual as an option, and we should be given more time than a few days to prepare for said meetings. And I'm also here just to say that, like many other people who spoke today, I'm voicing opposition to the proposed increase. My vision of a safer future is one with fewer police and more accessibility to community services such as housing, healthcare, education, food security, and recreation. So while many of those things are seeing decreased funding, I don't think it's appropriate for the police to receive increased funding. It's my belief that the police use a more patriarchal and colonial practice that centers punishment and compliance rather than trauma-informed care. And I don't think that that method prevents crime. And I think that in many cases it increases harm. So yeah, that's my opinion. I think I'm just seconding what many other people have said before me. And so I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Veronica. I don't see anyone looking for clarification. So at this point, I'd like to offer the other presenters, other residents who may be joining us tonight, if there are any further interest, if anyone has any further interest in speaking. Andrea, how do they actually tell me?
Sorry, Chair. Actually, I believe I might have neglected to delete that from the annotated agenda because that only applies when we're in person. My apologies for that. Because we can only give the Zoom link to registered speakers.
Okay, good.
So we're finished with speakers. And my apologies. The person that was having the difficulties with her internet, it was Monica and not Amanda. And Monica will be submitting correspondence.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, so seeing none of those, I would like to make sure offer the floor to either Chief Kinsella or Chief Christie in case there are any points of clarification they'd like to offer. Can some maybe just give me a nod if you're interested. Okay, let's start with Chief Kinsella.
Thanks, Chair, and through you to the Commission. Really appreciate the opportunity. Just want to make a few points, knowing that full deliberation will occur next week, and we'll have that opportunity. Over the past 2 weeks, the past 2 meetings, there has been a number of speakers who have come forward and making allegations against the Halifax Regional Police in the area of conduct and behavior and those kind of things. They happened last week at length. They happened tonight at length. What I would say is that, we have a process for that. And we've been very transparent and open to invite people to come forward and bring those incidents or concerns to us or through the Commission so we can properly have a review and or investigation as required. So I wanted to say that to the listening public and just remind them, we take those allegations very seriously. And sometimes when they're presented in meetings like this without full context and supporting information, it leaves people with the wrong impression and doesn't allow us to properly investigate. And I can tell you, the vast majority of our members are performing admirably day in and day out, and would welcome the opportunity to have any allegations against their conduct looked into. The other thing I would say is some of our speakers tonight spoke about the national policing model. And I don't think we have to look too much farther than what's happening here in Nova Scotia with the Mass Casualty Commission, what's happening in British Columbia, and what's happening in Alberta. There's many, many opinions on, what is the right policing model for any community, any municipality, and many arguments can be made in all different directions. So the thing I would say about that is I think we need to keep the discussion open, and I'm not sure how some members' opinion of a superior policing model is exactly relevant to this discussion tonight. And the other piece in particular, one of the speakers made a comment about the specialized services and the ability of the HRP to deliver. I can tell you that the HRP is a premier police service, serving and responding to the most populous city in the province. And look no further than last year's presentation on the budget. There is a line-by-line listing in that as an annex of every service that the HRP, specialized service that the HRP offers, compared with our partners in policing. And you will see that there's very little difference between the two. So I just wanted to point that out because I think it's important that we have that opportunity. And I have others on some of the comments, but I'm going to leave it at that just for specificity. And the last thing I just want to mention is much has been said about the budget of increase of 6.069 million. And that is true. That is in fact what we are asking for. But I said on December 14th, and I said in our last meeting in January, and I'm trying to bring clarity to the topic, 5.441 million of that 6.069 is already committed through compensation, collectively bargained through the appropriate processes, and that amount is finalized. What we're looking for and what we're bringing forward is 628,000 in the first year, and then increases following that for very needed services that we can deliver on, very needed supervisory positions that we can deliver on. And I know we're going to talk about this more next week, so I'm going to sum it up. I look forward to that deliberation and further discussion around those items, and very much appreciate the opportunity to say a few words today, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. And Chief Christie, go ahead.
Hi, Chair, through you to all the colleagues participating this evening. Hopefully you can hear me okay. The first thing, there was a number of comments made about police oversight and specific to the RCMP. The RCMP does participate in the Nova Scotia Serious Incident Response Model. And there are a number of rigorous bodies, including the Public Complaints Commission. But again, I would echo Chief Kinsella's comments that if somebody felt that an RCMP officer had used a disproportionate amount of force or the wrong attitude, et cetera, I would encourage that to be reported, and I would encourage that to be investigated. Other than that, no further comments for the table tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any clarification for the chiefs from any commissioners? No? Okay. Well, that brings us to an end of this agenda. We should note that to anyone who's still viewing public, that there will be a special meeting on Friday next week. 30th, I think it is.
Chair Kent, it's next Monday, January.
Monday, the 30th. Yeah, sorry. Monday, the 30th of January. Thank you, Andrea. And to confirm, Andrea, just are we meeting in City Hall or at Harbour East Marine Drive?
Chair Kent, it's going to be at Harbour East in Dartmouth in order to allow for a live stream of the meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, folks. I've got two people who would like to offer comment. I'll start with you, Jerry. Adjourn.
Respectfully, Commissioner Critchley had his hand up first. So if he'd like to go first, I'll defer to him, if that's okay.
Sure, but I want to hear from you first before Harry. I'm only kidding. Go ahead, Commissioner Critchley.
Thank you, Chair Kent. You really know I'm a guy. I feel great. I just had a quick question of clarification for the chief, and I appreciate his comment. I think it's really valuable to help the public understand the extent to which of the requested increase, the vast majority is is, 90% is dealing with the new funds covered under the collective agreement. But I just wondered, so my question of clarification relates to the rest of the budget, right? The budget is 95 million in total. You're talking now about 6 million, right, of $600,000 of service enhancements, 5.4 million in collective agreement. But we seem to be hearing a lot of concerns from the public about information as it relates to the remaining 89 million dollars of the budget. And so my question is, I know year over year the HRM produces a budget book, and that provides a line by line accounting of each line item within HRP. Has that been made available to the public ahead of this budget process, or is that made available after this budget process?
So, Commissioner, thanks for your question, and through you, Chair. My understanding is that particular information will be submitted to Council when the budget goes forward, and if CFO Blackwood has anything to add to that, I'll obviously maybe stand to be corrected. The other piece I would say, just for clarification around compensation, wages, benefits, all those things are negotiated regularly by every organization and all the business units that are unionized. That particular aspect of the ask, while it is an increase, is something that in many organizations and in many business units internally, those things get hammered out beforehand and then get added to the budget as we go forward. So I do appreciate your comments around the ask that we have, the 5 positions that we're looking for. That's fair, and that's important, and that's appropriate. My points of it all are just to say there isn't $6 million here that I'm aware of, unless there's some other changes that are coming. There's an ask of just over 600,000. So I just want people to have a good, clear understanding of what we're talking about, and certainly have those dialogues and deliberations and discussions to see if that is in fact the will of the board as we go forward. I just wanted to add that, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. And I don't disagree with you there. The point I was trying to make, maybe it didn't come across clearly, was that we're on the same page as it relates to the funds. Obviously the collective bargaining process is one that goes on in many business units. So my question didn't relate to that. My question was, as it relates to the other parts of the budget that aren't contemplated in the collective agreement increases or the proposed service enhancements, has that information, like, as far as I'm aware, as a commissioner, I haven't been provided with the line by line listing of items that are ultimately going to make their way into the budget book. And I think that's my question of clarification.
So, Commissioner, sorry, are you looking for our revenues, expenses, that kind of breakdown in detail? Or are you talking about the cost of the service enhancements separated out for the supervision piece and for the therapy nurse and the psychologist?
No, I guess what I'm talking about, Chief, is so we've had, received lots of information about the proposed service enhancements. I have information about the increases based over last year's budget that are contemplated by the new collective agreement. I'm not asking questions about that, but the remainder of the budget, the stuff that's carrying over from last year, that's where I'm wondering, has the board been provided the information with respect to the remaining kind of $89 million of the budget that's not contemplated in that $6 million that we've been talking about for several weeks now?
So through you, Chair, to the Commissioner. So again, my understanding is consistent with other business units. That information goes forward to Council along with the presentation that we will deliver to them, and that is currently slated for February 3rd.
Okay, thanks for clarifying, Chief.
Thank you. Okay. All we need now tonight is to wish you all a great evening and a call for adjournment.
Hang on a second. I think Jerry wants to speak.
All that lead in, and I missed you, Jerry.
No problem at all. Thank you, Chair, for and with the indulgence of the board. I just wanted to be, and the Chief just covered it there about this. The budget is scheduled to be at Council February 3rd. It was originally scheduled to be February 1. So I know deliberations on the budget start next week. So it's a tight turnaround to provide a budget recommendation and package to council. So I just say that respectfully to the board that next week is an important debate, and council is expecting a budget on February 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay. Anyone move to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Blackburn. I was going to think, do I have to do that myself, you guys? Thank you all for this evening, and we'll chat with you soon. Oh, Dan?
Sorry, I just